So you're listening to the WINFL show. Me and McKinnon, and I've got Patrick Jackson and Jake McGee, and we are very honoured to have a special guest. The man who needs no introduction to any NFL fans in the UK, Mr. Mark Chapman. Mark, how are you? It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
I'm very well. Thank you. That's a very kind introduction.
Not at all. It's absolutely true. Basically broadcasting royalty as far as we're concerned.
Well, do you know? Yeah, but the interesting thing is, which is probably a lesson to everybody, is the venue for this year's Super Bowl was actually where I presented my first ever Super Bowl in America. So back in, what would that have been, 2012, the San Francisco 49ers Baltimore Ravens Super Bowl, when Beyonce fused the Superdome and we did and in fact I think you're going to talk to Mike Carlson as well. Actually, he was one of my guests that night. And the only reason I go back to that is that was the second Super Bowl that I did. I'd done the year before from a studio in Salford, and I was absolutely terrible. So and in fact that Super Bowl in New Orleans was a very testing one to do, obviously, because there was no power and we were in darkness and so on and so forth. So it's quite a good lesson to everybody that you can have a second go at these things and maybe they go better a second time round. Everybody has to learn somewhere, don't they?
They certainly do indeed. Now, we had Ben Isaacs, the author of The American Football Revolution, on the podcast earlier. And you're no stranger to writing yourself, Mark, because I believe you did write a book in 2010, Heroes, Hairbands and Hissy Fits, Chapper's History of Modern
That was
Football.
that was a terrible book. I've actually written, and I didn't want to call it. I didn't want to call it that, and the publishers made me call it that. And it is a little bit of just a moan, really, and very much of the time. Whereas several years later, although I can't remember exactly the year, I did write another one about family and sport and being a dad of kids that do sport and so on and so forth, which again was called something by the publishers that I didn't want to call it, but called for the love of the game. But even though neither of them sold very well at all, I'm much prouder of the second one than I am of that aforementioned one in 2010 or something like that. The problem with books is, well, probably with lots of things actually, is you have to do publicity for them, and I hate doing publicity, so I just prefer to get on with it. So there we are.
Oh, fair enough. Now we do have a game to talk about. It's the Super Bowl. Now, what we're looking for you, Mark, is a prediction. We're looking for ideally a score prediction.
Okay. Have you all done your predictions?
We have done. We've got our predictions. Yes.
Okay.
We will not be revealing anyone else's predictions because we don't want to influence you.
Well, no, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. You although I am interested in what you three think of this Super Bowl, because I feel a sort of about this Super Bowl. but genuinely, for the first time in probably a decade, really, I think. Well, certainly since since doing it properly with OC and Jason when I was doing it, and still being a massive fan, obviously, I just feel it just feels a bit anticlimactic for me, for a whole variety of reasons. And lots of people I talk to tend to feel the same way, but I don't know if that's a general feeling amongst the NFL community.
I think it is. I don't know how the other guys feel, but I think most people would have preferred any other matchup than the one that we're getting.
Yeah.
If we'd had Kansas City,
we were definitely rooting for Commanders Bills. Absolutely.
Everyone was looking for Commanders Bills, but I would have taken Bills Eagles. I would have taken Chiefs Commanders.
Because then you have somebody to root for, don't you? You have a sort of, not that I would call the Bills an underdog in that situation, but you sort of have. Do you know what? You have a story to root for. And I know there's an element of the 3P and the historical side of that. But for a whole variety of reasons, even the 3P, and I'm all Chiefs fans on my back here, but even the 3P doesn't feel massively romantic.
I think it's probably almost an inevitable feeling about it. So many people are expecting it, that if the Chiefs do 3P, no one's going to be surprised.
No.
And I think that's sort of where it's coming from, because if they were underdogs in this game, if they'd gone up against an undefeated Detroit Lions, then I think a lot of people would be going, oh, well, it'd be more interesting. But being the Eagles again, I think it's just a sense. A lot of people are expecting the Chiefs to win. But Saquon Barkley might have something to say about that.
Yeah, maybe. But then also, and then somebody else said to me, is it because just they're so dominant and this, that, and the other? And I didn't. It doesn't have anything to do with that for me. Actually, I still, dominance can still be an amazing thing. I was in. Christ, I can't remember what the city was. Was it Houston when Brady brought the Patriots back against Atlanta? Was that Houston? I think it may have. Anyhow, to be in the stadium for that Super Bowl was one of the greatest sporting events I have ever been at. Up there with, say, Tiger Woods winning the Masters in 2019 as just a wow, take your breath away greatness moment.
Yeah,
and therefore I don't think it is down to dominance or boredom or whatever. There's just something that just feels a little bit, as you say, I think a little bit predictable, but also the fact that they don't feel as exciting, don't the Chiefs, as they felt like a couple of years ago. And I can't put my finger on that, really.
Yeah, just totally different style of play now. I believe.
So, but if you want a prediction and everything, I think the Chiefs will win it, and I'll go 24-20.
Oh, 24-20, says Mark Chapman to the Kansas City Chiefs. There we go.
Now, to play devil's advocate, last Super Bowl between the Chiefs and Eagles was a corker. It was 38-35.
Yes.
But I completely understand in terms of I've been a professional hater of the Chiefs for the entire playoffs.
I didn't know that.
My pick'ems have been in shambles because I just keep on picking against the Chiefs until it'll eventually work. And the Eagles fans are some of the worst fans. We talk about the Bills fans being, some of the best fans we have. The Eagles fans can't help themselves and do something stupid. So they're certainly, like I say, not easy to root for anybody. But I will be rooting against the Chiefs just because eventually it has to be right eventually. Just law of averages.
I have a bit of a as I think a lot of people do as well. Just Nick Sirianni is just very difficult to warm to. I know that's not the most controversial thing that's ever been said, but I still go back to that very first press conference he did, which was quite possibly one of the most astonishing introductions of a head coach manager in any sport I think I've ever seen. Because you did come away from that thinking, my God, what have they done? What have they done? So on the one hand, I suppose he deserves credit for what he has done, and they deserve credit for appointing him. But and Eagles fans won't care about this because this is exactly how it should be, really, I think, for your team. Even though he's had a go at them as well at times. But that sort of siege mentality fits very well for Philadelphia and the Eagles of us against the world. So, yeah.
I like the trend he started where if things started going bad, he just took his kid to the press conference. You're not going to be rude to a guy with his kid there.
It's like a human shield for an interview. Oh, dear.
Very true.
Patrick?
I'm clinging to the hope that we've seen the Eagles getting better and better, and they seem to be peaking right for this game. The Chiefs have been consistently holding teams just at arm's length. So I'm hoping we see two teams at the peak of their powers meeting, and the winner comes down to who can outcoach the other. And that's why I'm leaning towards the Chiefs as a win, but I'm not hoping for that, absolutely. that hopefully will counteract the lack of likability of either side for the neutral, shall we say.
It will. Now, Mark, you're a Bears fan?
I'm a Bears fan, yeah.
So, an interesting season for them.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm kind of in sporting hell with virtually every team that I support in any sport. I mean, in our football, I'm Manchester United, who are quite possibly the equivalent of the Bears at the moment. Rugby league team Hull FC had one of the worst seasons in living memory from a Hull team and survived by the skin of their teeth. My cricket team Lancashire got relegated in the coast. So the Bears fit in very well on my support the teams that I support landscape. But there's always hope, isn't there? There's always hope.
Well, some green shoots there, presumably, with first overall quarterback Caleb Williams coming into his second season and the much sought after Ben Johnson coming in as head coach.
Well, yes, but what I would say is, Pat, those green shoots were there as soon as the draft happened last year, and we all got very excited. And I've always thought there's something slightly strange about middle-aged men wearing team kit with a player's name and number on it, and therefore, but for the first time in about 20 years, I did then go and buy a Bears hoodie with 18 on the front and Williams on the back, which I've worn all year, and as it's got progressively more embarrassing, not from his perspective, but from the Bears' perspective. But yeah, look, there is real hope. It's the hope that kills you, isn't it? And it's going to happen. It's going to happen exactly the same again, because when they appoint, first of all, I didn't think they would appoint him. I thought they'd absolutely make a dog's dinner of it, and God knows who they would have gone with. But for the first time in a long time, as everybody's aware, they've actually gone with a head coach that was coveted by other teams. So that's the first thing that's quite positive. Look, he's I've devoured everything since then. Every video and interview and article. He's a very, very impressive individual, I think. Forget what he's done with the Lions offense. Just as an individual, he comes across really well. Even when he walked in to the building the first time and spoke to all the staff and stuff, you think, okay, right, you seem to have something, because that's always the big thing, isn't it? This is what they always say. You can be a great coordinator, but are you that leader of men, in inverted commas? He appears that already, and I like hirings that he has made, really. Again, just from what I've read from insiders and analysts and so on and so forth, Dennis Allen's a really clever signing. One, he's a very good DC, but secondly, he has that head coach. Look, and you can argue about how the head coaching experience went for him, but he has that experience, so he can help Ben Johnson there. And then, look, I don't know anything really about the OC that they've brought in, but he appears to be a facilitator from the Sean Payton tree, and I quite like the mix that he has put together there, and he's kept the special teams coordinator as well in Hightower. So everything so far looks good, but then how they recruit is obviously going to be key, because they need a lot of help on both lines.
Yeah, especially in that tough division. And I'm totally with you. You don't want to get your hopes too high and have them dash too hard. As a Jags fan, that speaks to me very closely.
Yes.
Well, yeah. And, I mean, you really are a shambles. So that's at least put me in a slightly better mood. So
I'm hoping we're coming out of our shambles era, but I've hoped that for the last 20 years.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Okay, Jake, you might as well tell Mark who you support.
I mean, imagine making a dog's dinner of an appointment and maybe still not having a head coach. That could be worse. I'm just hoping that the last guy on your list, once he wins or loses a Super Bowl, we just don't let him leave the city, basically, is now the hope.
Poor Saints. Poor Saints.
But then everybody. Well, then you're in a good position to talk about Dennis Allen, aren't you, Jake? Mm-hmm. Really. But then the other thing is, people keep, as I kept reading during before the Bears appointed Johnson, and when they wondered whether the Lions were going to go to the Super Bowl, the the constant comparison from those who were positive about eventually being able to get him was obviously Kyle Shanahan. Going back to that Super Bowl we were talking about, it was Kyle Shanahan and Atlanta and San Francisco basically having done the deal, but waiting for the end of that Super Bowl. So you have to hope something similar, don't you? But I'm not sure. I've got no evidence on this really. I'm just not 100% sure about Kellen Moore really, but who knows?
Neither was I, and I'm still to be convinced. But it's got to the point with the Saints head coaching gig. Where it's like, if it's not him, who's it going to be at this point?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But for Dennis Allen, I think, and I've covered it on the podcast and spoke about it over the years, he is a fantastic defensive coordinator. He's a lovely man. He just isn't a head coach. And you tend to see that with some defensive coordinators. Look at Steve Spagnuolo, one of the best, if not the best defensive coordinators, has never really made it stick at head coach.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think for Ben Johnson, getting somebody who has experience at head coach is a fantastic defensive coordinator, is a superb hire because it will help him.
Yeah. Exactly.
I wonder if it's just a defensive coordinator thing because, we've had like Wade Phillips, genius, terrible head coach. Not terrible, but it didn't work out. Vance Joseph.
Yeah.
Vic Fangio. Gus Bradley.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's strange the way that works. Now, Jake, I believe you were going to ask Mark about the big news over the past day or two about one Myles Garrett.
Yeah, we've seen, obviously, it's Super Bowl week, it's all about American football, and then the NBA came in and stole the thunder a little bit. So the NFL had to get their own back. Myles Garrett's requested a trade. Cooper Kupp's been told he's being traded. Just if you had any thoughts on either of them, obviously both you would like at the Bears, I assume, but I don't know where they're going to end up.
Well, no, I don't know where they're going to end up either. And I mean, it is, isn't it? Because the reaction to both of them is quite interesting. And how can you request to leave the franchise? Well, actually, on the other side of the country, a franchise has just gone to see you're off. And even going back to the Luka Doncic trade that you were talking about in the NBA, the fact that they knew nothing about that trade until the two general managers went, by the way, we've traded you, shows how brutal American sport is. I think I was talking to somebody yesterday about the NBA, and there are only two players, of which LeBron is one, obviously, who have no trade clauses in their contract. So they are all treated like commodities, aren't they? The majority of players, as they are in most sports, to be honest with you. Cooper Kupp at the Bears, I'm not sure about really. I think the Keenan Allen thing was all right for a season, but I think they might look to go in a slightly different direction, and they just might want young and fast and see where they go with that. Myles Garrett would be amazing at the Bears, and again, you look at all the articles and you devour them, and there's like 10 teams who he'd be a great fit for, and this that. I mean, he'd be a great fit virtually for anybody, wouldn't he? Really. I think there are two things. You're probably going to have to give up a first-round pick this year and a first-round pick next year. Do you want to do that? Not especially when you have needs, quite a few needs from a Bears point of view. The other thing, which I think is more from his side, is he wants to, and I can completely understand this. He wants to win the Super Bowl, doesn't he? He's like, I've got all the money I need. I want to win the Super Bowl. Having said that, you are going to have to probably give him 30 million plus a year to get him. And I don't think the Bears are Super Bowl ready. I mean, the concern is that the other three teams in the NFC North might consider themselves Super Bowl ready and then go again as well, which would make it an absolute bloody nightmare in that division. So, it's. I mean, I'm loving all the potential and who would get offered and this, that, and the other. I saw one with the Chargers where they'd give whatever picks and they'd send Bosa the other way to. Please, so you're swapping Bosa for Garrett and a couple of picks, whatever. So, but Cleveland has said they want to hold on to him as well, haven't they? So who knows? I mean, when I first started doing the NFL second time round with OC and Jason, Cleveland were a absolute shit show at that stage, and paper bags on their heads and all of that kind of stuff. And it appears to have come full circle again for them.
Yeah, they look like they had a couple of years where, hey, these guys are challenging. You know, they made the playoffs with Joe Flacco. And then,
but look, well, we all know what they did, don't we? And,
we do.
And
well, they went from lovable underdogs to being everybody's 32nd team.
Everybody's 32nd team, 100%.
Definitely.
Well, and they've only got themselves to blame, haven't they? Really, in the front office, at least.
Lest we not forget the teams like the Saints and the Falcons that also wanted Deshaun Watson. That very often those teams, love seeing the hate the Browns getting, but there was other teams trying to coach.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, Mark, once again, we don't want to take up too much time. I say we know you're very, very busy. Okay. You've given us a Super Bowl prediction.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be willing to offer us a possible dark horse MVP? Because everyone's expecting if the Chiefs win, it's Mahomes. If the Eagles win, it's probably going to be Saquon or Hurts. If it wasn't going to be one of those guys,
a dark horse MVP.
Who do you think might?
Can you have a dark horse MVP? I mean, look,
I'll give you an example.
I always find the MVP thing slightly. I've never. To be honest with you, I've never massively understood it because obviously profile plays a high part, and it more often than not goes to a quarterback and so on and so forth. And then sometimes because of the nature of how it's decided before you've got the Super Bowl. And I would argue if you have a performance from someone that leads you to a Super Bowl, you probably need to wait until after the Super Bowl before you. Hang on, are you talking Super Bowl MVP?
Super Bowl MVP.
Oh. Sorry, I thought you meant the overall MVP.
No.
Decided NFL honors.
Lamar is going to win. It should have been Saquon, but Lamar's going to win it. We know that. No, Super Bowl MVP. That's my fault, Mark. Sorry.
Super Bowl MVP. Mighty. Have a dark horse Super Bowl MVP. Can you really?
Well, Ben Isaacs had said who did he suggest? Xavier Worthy. Having a big game, and so possible. As I say, we know it's going to be either Mahomes, Saquon, Jalen Hurts. That's it.
I think Chris Jones just for a defensive one, and
there you go.
Because I also think it's interesting. Yeah, I was looking at some of the sort of betting on this, and they're not really betting people like for like in the so most yards rushing. They've one of the ones I saw was Kareem Hunt against Jalen Hurts because you can't put anybody against Saquon because he's going to do it. But then also for on the receiving side of things, they went with Travis Kelce from the Chiefs against Brown for the Eagles because so none of this is a like for like comparison. But I think if Jalen Hurts is shut down a bit, which there's every chance that he can be when you look at, him, well, I'm not bothered what my stats are because we win how we win and we win with Saquon and this, that, and the other. I think if the Chiefs shut him down a bit, then I'll go Chris Jones.
I like it. Because always got a chance when you got a pass rusher to get an MVP. A couple of sacks, maybe a forced fumble.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But then you get screwed up because last year I had Nick Bolton at 300-1, and he was the Super Bowl MVP. He played fantastic, and they gave it to So, but Chris Jones 66-1. Chris Jones.
Well, there you go then.
That's worth a quid.
Yeah,
that's a 100%. Yeah,
there you go.
100%.
There you go. Patrick, did you have anything else for Mark?
No, I think we're good.
Jake?
Good.
No, we've taken up enough of his time.
We have indeed. Mark, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Wish you luck with everything.
Thank you very much. And good luck on Match of the Day 2025. My goodness.
Thank you.
That's excellent stuff. Mark Chapman, thank you.
I'll come back on next year when the Bears have won the Super Bowl.
Love it.
We'll hold you to that. Cheers.
I've been waiting a long time. See you later.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you.